I don't care what people say. People around here are friendly. Red Dead Redemption 2's world is vast and gorgeous. The team at Rockstar made sure that the landscape felt as authentic as possible, and you may already have noticed parts of the map that bear a striking resemblance to real-world locations. I'm Sydney with The Leaderboard, and we're going to take a little tour of Red Dead Redemption's map. The civilized world. A lot of action happens in town in Red Dead Redemption 2, and each town in the game draws some inspiration from real-life places. We can start with the most obvious, the bustling city of Saint-Denis. Surrounded by a river, it bears a strong resemblance to New Orleans, where it is hugged by the Mississippi River. And let me tell you, you'll see tons of iconic New Orleans imagery here in Saint-Denis. Streetcars are a classic New Orleans sight that also show up in Saint-Denis. They're either the bane of your horse's existence or a fun way to take a ride in-game. New Orleans' St. Charles streetcar line has existed since 1835 and served as a good method of transportation back in the day. Even today, it's a fun tourist attraction. The Commander's Place, a famous restaurant in New Orleans, is featured in Red Dead Redemption 2 as an unnamed, unimportant building. Both buildings share bright blue and white colors and charming southern architecture, but unfortunately, you can't stop for a bite to eat at the in-game version. But my favorite New Orleans parallel captures the city's spookier side. The St. Louis Cemetery in New Orleans is known for its vault graves. They are above-ground tombs, and they're bunched together in so-called cities of the dead. These unique cemeteries sprung up because the ground in New Orleans is so wet, it's impossible to bury bodies underground. In Red Dead Redemption 2, the Saint-Denis Cemetery is very similar. If the streetcars didn't convince you that Saint-Denis is basically New Orleans, the cities of the dead should. And by the time you're done with the game, I'm pretty sure they'll have to double the size of that graveyard. While Rhodes and Valentine aren't inspired by any single town, they are straight out of a Western movie and the pages of a history book. Their wide dirt roads, low wooden buildings with flat roofs are emblematic of settlements of the time. And of course, Blackwater makes its return from the first game. You'll notice that it isn't quite as developed as it was in the original, but it's getting there. Interestingly, in both games, Blackwater is nearly identical to an actual town in Missouri. Its name? Well, Blackwater, of course. The real-world Blackwater was settled in 1887, which is roughly the same time period as Red Dead Redemption 2. The real-world Blackwater isn't exactly the Wild West, but eagle-eyed internet users discovered that the layout of the town is comparable to its in-game equivalent. Strange and unique findings. Red Dead Redemption 2 also captures major cultural and political moments of the era. The Wapiti Indian Reservation is a dark representation of the times Arthur Morgan lived in. The war against Native Americans still waged on in one form or another in 1899, and, like the real world, tribes were restricted to reservations. The lasting effects of the Civil War also made their mark on Red Dead's map. Remnants of a great battle can be found in Lemoyne's Boulder Glade. Spiked barricades and trenches lay unused, and the remains of Civil War-era cannons are broken and discarded. If you go back even further in the past, say, millions of years, you'll find other famous denizens of the region. Dinosaurs. They've left behind dinosaur bones, which makes for one of the more entertaining side quests in Red Dead Redemption 2. If you want to try this quest in real life, you can head to Dinosaur Valley State Park in Glen Rose, Texas, where you can see dinosaur footprints. While dinosaur bones had certainly been discovered earlier in the 1800s, it wasn't until the mid-1800s that dinosaurs were recognized as ancient animals with no living counterparts. In 1841, they were given their name, which means terrible lizards. Their discovery sparked dino fever, and many fossil hunters went in search of dinosaur remains. But they weren't all as lucky as Deborah McGinnis, the paleontologist in Red Dead Redemption 2, who has Arthur hunt up some fossils for her. And where there are fossils, there are fossil fuels. To this day, Texas produces more oil than any state. You can find references to black gold throughout the heartlands of Red Dead Redemption 2. Dastardly Leviticus Cornwall is taking advantage of the abundance of oil by establishing the Cornwall Kerosene and Tar Factory. Nearby, you can find the Heartland oil fields. Another major economic force in the West was the railroad. And I'm not just talking about robbing trains to line your pockets. Railroads were rapidly expanding in the 1800s. The Transcontinental Railroad was made in 1869. If you happen to stumble upon the Central Union Railroad in the game, you'll be able to see how they laid train tracks in the old days. You'll find foremen yelling at the workers, and if you come back to the location later in the game, you can see the progress they've made. The Central Union Railroad's name likely draws inspiration from the Union Pacific Railroad, which spanned multiple states, including Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and New Mexico. Arthur Morgan lived in a time where the fastest method of travel was by train. But nowadays, you don't even need to leave your living room to go on a tour of the West. I want to take a quick minute to shout out our sponsor, Elgato. With their portable green screen, you can go to the Rocky Mountains, or New Orleans, even if you don't live there. Or you could be in the Big Apple, you know, New York City. I bet it would look so cool. It's like so real. What is it, it's the Flatiron? Oh, the green screen's gone. He took it, okay. Well, if you want to buy your own green screen, click on the iCard in the upper right or the link in the description. Okay, let's get back to Red Dead Redemption 2 maps. The great outdoors. Red Dead Redemption 2 is massive, as evidenced by the fact that I can ride my horse for 10 straight minutes, taking in the gorgeous landscape the whole time. A large chunk of the first game's map is included in its sequel. To the northwest of Blackwater, near the upper edge of what was the original game's map, you'll find a whole new land filled with frosty mountains, grassy plains, dense forests, and deep valleys. In the first game, we assume we're near the border of Texas and Mexico, but the sequel seems to blend landscapes from a few western states. Ambarino is a mountainous territory that's filled with snow, and more snow. The landscape is dominated by frozen lake beds, tall, perilous mountains, and untamed wilderness. Texas has mountains, but Colorado seems like a more probable inspiration for Ambarino's frigid wilderness. Colorado is home to the Rocky Mountains, and in winter it looks almost exactly like Ambarino. The frozen Cairn Lake, nestled in the snowy mountains of Ambarino, resembles many alpine lakes found in the Rockies, like Crater Lake, for example. Despite the name, the West Grizzlies is a little more hospitable. Well, at least it's not covered in feet of snow. Donner Falls is a beautiful mountain waterfall that feeds into the Dakota River. Calumet Ravine is a great spot for fishing. And though Ambarino doesn't have too much to it other than nature at its finest, it looks more like real-life Colorado than anywhere else. If you're still not buying it, take a look at the wildlife. You won't find moose in Texas, but they can be found in Colorado. These animals prefer the colder climates, and unlike other areas in the game, they're much more abundant in Ambarino. Moving a bit south, we find ourselves in New Hanover. At this point, the environment transitions from chilly mountains to dense forests that eventually lead to plains. We could assume we're making our way out of Colorado and into Kansas or Texas. To the east is Lemoyne, which seems to be inspired by Louisiana, and further south we're reaching the first game setting, which would likely be around southern Texas near Mexico. New Hanover is comprised of plains and rocky areas, but there are some forested areas too. The Larned Sod is a great example of historically accurate detail. Back in the day, settlers made houses like this one from sod. They were most often found on prairies where there was little else to use for shelter. But the prairies weren't as lonely as they may have seemed. Well, at least not for buffalo. In Red Dead Redemption 2, you'll find buffalo in packs grazing in the grassy fields of the heartlands. The pronghorn are especially abundant there too. In real life, these antelope favor similar conditions to the bison and are common in the central US, including Texas and Colorado. Southeast is Lemoyne, a soggier bayou locale. The hills of New Hanover lead into low-hanging trees, marshes, and swamps. Scarlet Meadows is a dustier open area, and we can't forget all the wet of Bayou Noir and Blue Water Marsh. La Grasse in Bayou Noir is a murky swamp filled to the brim with man-eating alligators and snapping turtles waiting to take a hunk out of your horse. And if you know anything about Louisiana's ecosystem, you know it's full of swamps and bayous. Now, Texas might have similarly swampy areas to its east, but Saint Denis' similarities to New Orleans really drives home the area's Louisiana charm. West Elizabeth is in, well, the West, and appears similar to either West Texas or Oklahoma. The Tall Trees region is something of an outlier. Located in the northern portion of West Elizabeth, this place is true to its name. It has bona fide redwood trees, something you'd be more likely to find in California than in the Wild West. Still, Rockstar is taking creative liberties to make a beautiful game world. Moving on south, past the Great Valley, we make it to the Great Plains proper. Players of the first Red Dead will know this area as the home of Beecher's Hope, John Marston's ranch. But the last zone, New Austin, is undeniably that Wild West Texas feel. You know, the dusty area full of tumbleweeds? It's resoundingly Texan and has the rattlesnakes and armadillos to prove it. While the map isn't a perfect representation of any one place in the Old West, it captures the spirit and energy of some of the West's most important places. And considering the incredible geographic diversity of the West, I'm glad that Rockstar gave us a little taste of everything. And now the hat. If you want to learn more about Red Dead Redemption's lore, be sure to check out our complete Red Dead Redemption timeline. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the Leaderboard, your home for video game facts. Ma'am? Where's my money, Dutch, mister? Excuse me, pardon me.